I'm Olivia, 34, and last month my sister Vanessa humiliated me at our family reunion, calling me a failure in front of everyone. What she didn't know is that I'm the vice president of operations who approves her husband Trevor's projects and signs off on his paychecks. For years, I kept my success private while she flaunted her perfect life at my expense. The look on her face when she discovered the truth? Absolutely priceless. Before I continue with this wild story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had a family member underestimate you. Growing up, Vanessa was always 3 steps ahead of me. Being older by 3 years meant she did everything first, but it wasn't just about age. Our parents unconsciously played favorites, putting her achievements on a pedestal while mine collected dust on the shelf below. Mom, I got an A on my science project, I announced one evening at dinner when I was 12. That's nice, honey, Mom replied with a quick smile before turning to Vanessa. Vanessa, tell Dad about winning first place in the debate competition. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood. When I made the honor roll, Vanessa was class president. When I got a call back for the school play, Vanessa was already the lead in the county theater production. She never let me forget the hierarchy between us either. It's cute that you're trying, she would say, patting my head like I was a puppy learning tricks. Not everyone can be naturally talented. Our bedroom walls were covered with her certificates and ribbons. Mine were kept in a drawer because there wasn't enough space to display everyone's achievements. That message sank deep into my developing self-image. High school brought no relief. Vanessa was prom queen, valedictorian, and dating the quarterback. I found my niche with the debate team and literary magazine, but these accomplishments were considered niche compared to Vanessa's mainstream success. Olivia's doing her little writing thing, she would tell relatives at family gatherings. It keeps her busy while she figures out what she actually wants to do with her life. The college years only amplified our diverging paths. Vanessa followed the traditional route to success that our parents understood: prestigious university, popular sorority, business degree. She met Trevor during sophomore year at a fraternity mixer, and their relationship became another trophy in her collection. I took what my family viewed as detours. A gap year working at a local publishing company, starting at community college to save money, then transferring to a state school where I switched majors twice before settling on business administration with a focus on operations management. Still finding yourself? Vanessa asked during holiday breaks, her tone suggesting I was lost rather than exploring. When Vanessa got engaged to Trevor at 23, it became the sun around which our family orbited. The wedding planning consumed every conversation for a year. As a bridesmaid, I stood in a dress Vanessa had chosen specifically because the color works better with your complexion issues. The backhanded compliments were her specialty. After the wedding, Vanessa crafted her narrative about me to the extended family. According to her, I was struggling, unfocused, and unable to maintain relationships. She painted herself as the concerned older sister trying to help her directionless sibling find stability. Olivia's still figuring things out became her catchphrase, delivered with a sympathetic smile and slight shake of the head. What nobody noticed was my quiet determination. While Vanessa charmed family gatherings, I was working late, studying market trends, networking with professionals, and building a career path brick by careful brick. I didn't announce my moves because I'd learned early that in my family, accomplishments were currency, and I wanted to save mine until I had enough to change the conversion rate. My professional journey began at Anderson Financial Group in an entry-level operations position. My starting salary barely covered rent for my studio apartment and the minimum payments on my student loans. But while Vanessa saw this as confirmation of my struggling narrative, I recognized it as the first rung on a ladder I was determined to climb. Within 6 months, I caught the attention of Patricia Westfield, the operations director, when I stayed late to fix a spreadsheet error that would have cost the company thousands in misallocated resources. "You have an eye for systems," Patricia told me. "Most people see numbers. You see patterns." Under her mentorship, I learned to translate my analytical thinking into business strategy. When Patricia recommended me for a junior management position after just 18 months, I jumped at the opportunity despite the intimidating learning curve. The promotion came with new challenges. Bradley Thompson, my new supervisor, initially doubted my capabilities. "You're awfully young for this role," he commented during our first meeting. Rather than being discouraged, I used his skepticism as fuel, arriving early and leaving late, delivering reports ahead of schedule, and suggesting process improvements that saved the department significant time and resources. By my 28th birthday, I had moved up to senior operations manager, overseeing a team of 12. My reputation for turning around inefficient systems earned me an invitation to lead a special project revamping the company's supply chain management. The project's success caught the attention of Wilson and Reed Enterprises, a larger firm with an international presence. They recruited me with an offer I couldn't refuse: Assistant Vice President of Operations with a salary that tripled what I was making. 2 years of exceeding performance targets led to my promotion to Vice President of Operations at age 32, making me one of the youngest executives in the company's history. My office on the 38th floor offered a panoramic view of the city, a tangible symbol of how far I'd climbed. It was during my first month as VP that I discovered Trevor worked for Wilson and Reed. His name appeared on a project proposal that crossed my desk from the product development division. I recognized it immediately and verified through HR that yes, Trevor Matthews, Senior Product Manager, was indeed my brother-in-law. The discovery presented a dilemma. Company policy didn't prohibit family members working in separate departments, but it required disclosure for potential conflicts of interest. After careful consideration, I filed the appropriate paperwork noting our relationship, but requested that the information be kept confidential. "I want to maintain professional boundaries," I explained to HR. "We work in different divisions with minimal overlap. I'd prefer to keep my family and professional lives separate." What I didn't add was that neither Trevor nor Vanessa knew about my position. Trevor had joined the company after I was already established there, and since we worked in different buildings, our paths hadn't crossed. In company functions, I used my maiden name professionally, making the connection less obvious. While Vanessa continued to portray me as barely staying afloat, I was thriving. My luxury apartment in the city's most desirable district featured floor-to-ceiling windows and a private terrace. I took international vacations, invested wisely, and donated to causes I cared about. I built a life that brought me satisfaction independent of family validation. At work, colleagues respected my expertise and sought my input on major decisions. Board members knew my name. The CEO mentioned my contributions in quarterly meetings. The contrast between my professional respect and family perception couldn't have been more stark. I never deliberately hid my success from my family, but I didn't volunteer information either. Years of having my achievements diminished had taught me to protect what mattered to me. When asked about work at family gatherings, I kept my answers vague. "Things are going well," or "I'm enjoying my job." Let them assume what they wanted. I knew the truth. The annual Matthews family reunion at Uncle Robert's lakeside property was a tradition stretching back decades. Every July, relatives from across the country gathered for a weekend of barbecues, swimming, and the inevitable comparison of life milestones. I always approached the event with mixed emotions, a cocktail of anticipation and dread that grew stronger as the date approached. This year was no different as I packed my weekend bag, deliberately choosing outfits that were nice but not flashy. I'd learned that anything too expensive would prompt Vanessa's comments about me, trying too hard, or spending beyond my means. My strategy was simple: blend in, deflect personal questions, and escape with minimal emotional damage. The 3-hour drive to Lake Oswego gave me time to prepare mentally. I listened to my favorite podcast about women in business, drawing strength from stories of female executives overcoming bias and building success on their own terms. As the landscape transformed from city to countryside, I rehearsed neutral responses to the inevitable questions about my dating life, career, and future plans. Uncle Robert's sprawling property came into view as I rounded the final curve of the private road. Cars already lined the circular driveway, indicating most of the family had arrived. I recognized Aunt Martha's sensible sedan, Cousin Philip's minivan packed with his 3 kids' sports equipment, and my parents' SUV parked prominently near the entrance. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my bag and headed toward the main house, a rustic but luxurious lodge with a massive stone fireplace visible through the front windows. The scent of Uncle Robert's famous barbecue ribs greeted me before I even reached the door. "Olivia's here," announced Cousin Emma, the first to spot me entering. At 25, she had recently finished graduate school and started her first real job, as the family called it. Her genuine smile was a welcome relief. What followed was the usual gauntlet of greetings and surface-level catch-ups. Aunt Martha wanted to know if I'd met anyone special yet. Uncle James inquired about my little apartment in the city. Cousin Philip's wife, Melissa, mentioned a friend who was also single in her 30s and doing fine with it, as if my unmarried status required reassurance. "So, what are you up to these days, work-wise?" asked Uncle David, a retired insurance executive who prided himself on mentoring the younger generation. "Still in corporate finance," I replied with my practiced vague smile. "Keeping busy." "Good for you, sticking with it," he said, patting my shoulder in a way that suggested merely maintaining employment was an achievement for me. My parents arrived next in my greeting circuit. Mom hugged me and immediately started fixing my hair, a habit from childhood she never outgrew. "You look tired, sweetie," she said, examining my face. "Are you getting enough sleep? Those city jobs can be so demanding." Dad gave me a quick side hug. "There's my girl. How's the work situation? Still at that same company?" "Yes, Dad. Going on 6 years now." "Well, stability is important," he nodded approvingly, as if I should be grateful to have maintained any position for that long. The atmosphere shifted when a luxury SUV pulled into the driveway, fashionably late as always. Vanessa and Trevor had arrived. Their entrance was calculated for maximum impact, with Vanessa emerging in designer sunglasses and a flowing summer dress that probably cost more than what she thought I made in a month. "We're here," she announced, as if the party could now officially begin. "Sorry we're late. Trevor had an important call with some executives that ran long." Trevor followed behind her, carrying their luggage and looking distinctly less enthusiastic. I noticed the slight furrow in his brow, the tension around his mouth that suggested stress beneath his polished exterior. As a senior product manager, I knew he was under considerable pressure to deliver results, especially with the new product line he was championing. Vanessa made her rounds, dispensing hugs and collecting compliments on her new highlights. When she reached me, her embrace was brief, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Olivia, good to see you made it. Love that top. Is it new? Target has really stepped up their game, haven't they?" Before I could respond, she was already showcasing the diamond tennis bracelet Trevor had given her for their anniversary, angling her wrist to catch the sunlight. "Trevor surprised me last month. Isn't it gorgeous? He says I deserve beautiful things." Throughout the afternoon, Vanessa strategically dropped mentions of their recent vacation to Bali, the renovations to their suburban home, and Trevor's important role at a major corporation. What she didn't mention, but I could see plainly, was the strain around Trevor's eyes when she talked about their lifestyle. During a moment alone by the drink table, I observed Trevor checking his phone repeatedly, his expression growing more concerned with each glance. I knew Wilson and Reed's quarterly reviews were approaching, and his department was under scrutiny for budget overruns. The project proposal I'd seen needed approval to secure his team's position for the coming year. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me, but I maintained my professional distance, simply nodding politely when our eyes briefly met across the patio. The stage was set for the evening's main event. The extended family dinner, where achievements were displayed like peacock feathers and perceived failures were subtly picked apart under the guise of concern. Little did anyone know, this particular family dinner would upend the narrative Vanessa had crafted for years. Uncle Robert's massive oak dining table, extended to its full length, dominated the great room. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier overhead, and the good china, reserved for special occasions, marked each place setting. Family members filtered in, finding their seats among the carefully arranged name cards, another of Vanessa's contributions to the event. I noted with resignation that I'd been placed between great Aunt Phyllis, who was hard of hearing, and Cousin Gregory's new girlfriend, whom I'd never met. Vanessa and Trevor, naturally, sat in prime positions near our parents and Uncle Robert, the spots reserved for family members with news worth hearing. The dinner began pleasantly enough with Uncle Robert's traditional welcome toast and Aunt Linda's prayer of thanks. Platters of perfectly grilled steaks, roasted vegetables, and fresh salads made their way around the table as conversations bubbled in small clusters. "So," began Aunt Carol, directing her question to Cousin Emma, "I heard you started at that marketing firm downtown. How's that going?" Emma launched into an enthusiastic description of her new position, her projects, and her hopes for advancement. The family responded with encouraging nods and follow-up questions, genuinely interested in her early career journey. "What about you, Philip?" Uncle David turned to my cousin. "How's the dental practice?" "Expanding," Philip replied proudly. "We're adding another chair and bringing in an associate next month." The conversation continued around the table, each family member given their moment to share updates and receive appropriate acknowledgement. When Trevor's turn came, Vanessa answered for him. "Trevor's absolutely killing it at work," she announced, placing her hand over his. "His team is developing a revolutionary new product line that's going to be huge for the company. His boss practically depends on him." Trevor smiled tightly and added, "It's a team effort, but yes, we're hoping for approval on a major project soon." I kept my expression neutral, knowing that as VP of Operations, I would have final say on resource allocation for that very project. The spotlight eventually found its way to me when Aunt Martha innocently asked, "And what about you, Olivia? How's work going for you these days?" I took a small sip of water, formulating my standard response. "It's going well. I'm still with Wilson and Reed in the finance department. Staying busy." Before I could elaborate further, Vanessa's laugh cut through the momentary pause. "Oh, Olivia and her mysterious office job. She's been staying busy for years, but somehow never has any exciting updates." A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled around the table. I maintained my composure, but Vanessa was just getting started. "You know," she continued, addressing the table more than me, "Olivia's been at that company forever, but she's still living in that tiny apartment downtown. What is it, a studio? 1 bedroom?" "It suits my needs," I replied evenly. "And she's still driving that old Honda, right? The one from college?" Vanessa turned to me with exaggerated concern. "You really should consider upgrading to something safer, Liv. Trevor could recommend some good lease options that might work with your situation." Trevor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but remained silent. "My car runs perfectly fine, thank you," I said. "It's just funny," Vanessa continued, warming to her theme, "how differently lives can turn out. Olivia and I had the same opportunities growing up, but here she is, still playing with spreadsheets while the actual executives make the real decisions." The table fell awkwardly silent. Mom looked down at her plate. Dad became very interested in cutting his steak. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "I'm sure Olivia's position is very stable," Vanessa added, as if bestowing a great compliment. "Not everyone needs ambition or success. Some people are just happy with consistency." I felt the familiar burn of humiliation, the same feeling I'd experienced countless times throughout our childhood. But this time, it was mingled with something new, the absolute knowledge that Vanessa's perception was completely disconnected from reality. Trevor, looking increasingly uncomfortable, attempted to change the subject. "The steaks are excellent, Uncle Robert. Did you use a new marinade this year?" But Vanessa wasn't finished. "Maybe this year you'll finally get that promotion you've been hoping for, Liv. How long has it been now? 5 years in the same position? 6. I could have corrected her. I could have mentioned my corner office on the executive floor, my team of 35, my seat at the leadership table. I could have revealed that I would be reviewing her husband's project proposal on Monday morning. But years of experience had taught me that family gatherings weren't the place for such revelations. It would create a scene that would overshadow the reunion and force everyone to recalibrate their understanding of the family dynamic. So instead, I smiled slightly and said, "I'm quite content with my career progress, Vanessa. But thank you for your concern." Always so mysterious, Vanessa stage whispered to Aunt Martha. "I think she's embarrassed, poor thing." As the conversation mercifully moved on to Cousin Gregory's recent house purchase, I caught Trevor looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Curiosity? Suspicion? Whatever it was, it vanished quickly as Vanessa pulled his attention back to her with a hand on his arm and a question about their upcoming anniversary plans. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of dessert, coffee, and more family updates. I contributed minimally to the conversation, processing the irony of the situation and considering what Monday morning might bring. By the time the gathering broke up for the evening, with everyone retiring to their assigned rooms or nearby hotels, I had made my decision. I would evaluate Trevor's project purely on its merits, regardless of the family connection. My professional integrity demanded nothing less. What I couldn't predict was how quickly the carefully maintained separation between my personal and professional lives was about to collapse. Monday morning arrived with the distinctive energy of a pivotal day. The Wilson and Reed headquarters towered 50 stories above the financial district, its glass exterior reflecting the clear blue sky. I arrived at 7:30 a.m., as was my custom, enjoying the quiet hour before most staff members arrived to review reports and prepare for the day ahead. My executive assistant, Jordan, met me at the elevator with a steaming latte and my schedule for the day. "Good morning, Ms. Richards," he said, using my professional name. "The quarterly projection reports are on your desk, and I've scheduled the product development review for 10 a.m. in conference room A as requested." "Thank you, Jordan. Any changes to the attendee list?" "No changes. The product development team will be represented by Mr. Matthews and his senior designers. CFO Wilson will join remotely, and Ms. Patel from legal will attend to address any contract questions." I nodded, taking the schedule and coffee. "Perfect. Please ensure all the presentation materials are ready in the conference room and have finance send up the latest budget allocations for the division." My office occupied the northeast corner of the executive floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Awards and recognition from industry organizations lined one wall, while another displayed framed illustrations of patented operational systems I designed. The contrast between this space, where I was respected and valued, and the family dinner table where I'd been dismissed as unambitious, couldn't have been more stark. The morning passed quickly as I reviewed departmental reports and prepared for the product development presentation. At 9:45, I gathered my materials and headed to conference room A, a sleek space with a massive oval table and state-of-the-art presentation equipment. Meanwhile, 12 floors below, Trevor Matthews was experiencing the most stressful morning of his career. His team had spent 6 months developing a new product line that promised to revolutionize the company's market position, but it required significant operational resources to implement. Today's presentation to the Vice President of Operations would determine whether the project received the green light or was shelved indefinitely. "This has to go well," Trevor told his team as they gathered their presentation materials. "The VP of Operations has final say on resource allocation. Without their approval, this project dies, and we'll all be updating our resumes." What Trevor didn't know, what he couldn't have anticipated, was that the mysterious VP he'd never met was his sister-in-law, the same woman his wife had mockingly called a failure just 2 days earlier. In the elevator riding up to the executive floor, Trevor confided in his colleague, Marcus. "Between us, I really need this win," he admitted, straightening his tie nervously. "Vanessa's spending has been aggressive lately. The house renovations, the Bali trip, her new car. We're extended further than I'm comfortable with." "You'll nail this," Marcus assured him. "Your presentation is solid, and the numbers make sense. The VP would be crazy not to approve it." They arrived at conference room A 5 minutes early, setting up their presentation while other attendees filtered in. The CFO's face appeared on the large screen at the end of the room, and the legal representative took her seat, reviewing documents. "The VP is very punctual," whispered the executive assistant to Trevor. Should be here any moment. At precisely 10 a.m., the conference room door opened and I walked in, portfolio in hand. Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. The color drained from Trevor's face as our eyes met. Recognition, confusion, and then horror flashed across his features in rapid succession. For a brief moment, the professional facade we both maintained threatened to crack. I recovered first, extending my hand professionally. Mr. Matthews, I believe this is your team's presentation. Please proceed when you're ready. Trevor stood frozen for several seconds before his colleague nudged him gently. With visible effort, he composed himself and began the presentation, his voice initially unsteady but gradually finding its rhythm as he focused on the familiar material. Throughout the hour-long presentation, Trevor avoided direct eye contact with me, addressing his comments to the room in general or to the other executives present. His team members, unaware of the underlying tension, contributed their portions with enthusiasm, clearly believing in the project's potential. When the presentation concluded, I asked several pointed questions about resource requirements, market projections, and implementation timelines. Each question was fair and relevant to the decision at hand, without any hint of personal bias. Thank you for your thorough presentation, I said as the meeting wrapped up. My team and I will review the proposal and provide our decision by the end of the week. Mr. Matthews, if you could stay behind for a moment to clarify a few additional points, I'd appreciate it. As the room emptied, Trevor remained seated, his posture rigid with tension. When the door closed behind the last team member, silence hung heavy between us. Olivia, he finally managed. I had no idea. Clearly, I replied, gathering my notes calmly. You're the vice president of operations? Since when? I was promoted 2 years ago. I've been with the company for 6 years total. Trevor ran a hand through his hair, visibly processing this revelation. Does Vanessa know? What do you think? I asked, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. My God, he muttered. All those things she said at dinner about your apartment, your car, your lack of ambition? Yes, I said simply. Those things. Trevor's expression shifted from shock to something approaching respect. You didn't say anything. You just sat there and took it, knowing all along that I'm the executive who will determine whether your project moves forward? Yes. The implications of this reality seemed to hit Trevor in waves. Will what happened at dinner affect your decision about the project? I stood, gathering my materials. Mr. Matthews, I've built my career on making objective business decisions based on data and company interests, not personal feelings. Your project will be evaluated on its merits alone. Relief flickered across his face, followed quickly by concern. Vanessa this is going to be complicated? I supplied. Yes, I imagine it will be. But that's a personal matter, separate from our professional relationship. As I moved toward the door, Trevor called after me. Olivia, wait. Are you going to tell her, or should I? I paused, considering the question. That's your decision, Trevor. But she'll know by the end of the day either way. The question is whether you want her to hear it from you first. With that, I left him alone in the conference room, returning to my office to begin the objective evaluation of a project that would inevitably send ripples through both my professional and personal worlds. The call came at 6:38 p.m., just as I was preparing to leave my office. Vanessa's name flashed on my phone screen, and I took a deep breath before answering. Hello, Vanessa. Is it true? Her voice vibrated with emotion. Tell me Trevor is making some sick joke. If you're asking whether I'm the vice president of operations at Wilson & Reed, then yes, it's true. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she might have hung up. Finally, her voice returned, tight with controlled fury. How long have you been keeping this from me? I haven't been keeping it from anyone, Vanessa. I simply don't broadcast my career achievements. Something I learned early in our family. Don't you dare make this about childhood grievances, she snapped. You deliberately humiliated me. You sat there at dinner while I talked about your mediocre job, knowing all along that you're Trevor's boss. Technically, I'm several levels above Trevor's direct supervisor. But yes, I was aware of the irony. This is just like you, Olivia. Always the victim, always keeping score, waiting for the perfect moment to make me look bad. I closed my eyes, recognizing the familiar pattern of Vanessa turning her behavior into my fault. That's not what happened, and you know it. I didn't create the situation at dinner. You did. So this is revenge? You're going to tank Trevor's project because your feelings got hurt. I've already told Trevor, and I'll tell you now, the project will be evaluated solely on its business merits. My personal feelings have no bearing on professional decisions. How noble of you, she said, sarcasm dripping from every word. The perfect Olivia, so professional, so above it all. Does it feel good, finally having power over me after all these years? The accusation stung because it contained a kernel of truth. Part of me had enjoyed knowing what she didn't know, had taken some satisfaction in the eventual revelation. But that wasn't the whole story, or even most of it. This isn't about power, Vanessa. It's about respect. Something you've never shown me. Oh, please. You've been playing the underdog role for decades. Poor overlooked Olivia, never getting the recognition she deserves. Well, congratulations. You've got everyone's attention now. The conversation continued in this vein for several more minutes, with Vanessa alternating between accusations and attempts to make me feel guilty for my success. When she finally ran out of steam, a different kind of silence fell between us. Are you finished? I asked quietly. What happens now? She asked, her voice suddenly smaller. Now we have a choice. We can continue the pattern we've been in since childhood, or we can try something different. Different how? I don't know yet, I admitted. But I think it starts with truth. The truth is, I've worked incredibly hard for my position. I've earned every promotion, every responsibility. And the truth is, you've spent years diminishing my achievements because they didn't fit your narrative. Vanessa didn't immediately deny it, which felt like the first honest moment between us in years. We should talk in person, she finally said. Not over the phone. I agree, but not tonight. I have a project to evaluate objectively. I reminded her, a hint of irony in my voice.
Fine.
Dinner tomorrow? My house. I considered the invitation, imagining the tension of sitting at Vanessa's dining table after everything that had transpired. Let's meet on neutral ground. The cafe near the lake, 7 p.m. Fine, she agreed tersely before hanging up without a goodbye. The following evening arrived with remarkable speed. I spent the day reviewing Trevor's project proposal with my team, deliberately focusing on the numbers, market projections, and resource requirements rather than the personal complications. By 5 p.m., we had reached a decision based entirely on business considerations. The cafe near Lake Oswego was quiet on Tuesday evenings, with just a few tables occupied when I arrived. I chose a corner spot with some privacy and ordered a cappuccino while waiting for Vanessa. She arrived precisely at 7, her expression a careful mask of neutrality. You're looking very executive, she commented as she sat down, eyeing my work attire. I came directly from the office, I explained, not rising to the bait. After ordering her own drink, Vanessa cut straight to the point. Have you made a decision about Trevor's project?
Yes.
The company has decided to move forward with it, with some modifications to the resource allocation and timeline. Relief flickered across her face before she controlled her expression. And this decision was made. Objectively and collectively, I finished for her. Trevor's team presented a solid business case. Vanessa nodded slowly, processing this information. Thank you for that. Trevor's been incredibly stressed about it. I know. The pressure in product development has been intense this quarter. An uncomfortable silence settled between us as we both recognized the shift in dynamics. Vanessa no longer had the upper hand in information about Trevor's work life, and we both knew it. How long have you known that Trevor works for your company? She finally asked. About 2 years. I noticed his name on some paperwork shortly after my promotion. And you never said anything? Through all those family gatherings, all those times I talked about his job. What would have been the point? I asked genuinely. To announce that I outrank your husband in a corporate hierarchy? How would that have improved our relationship? Vanessa had no immediate answer for that. She stirred her coffee unnecessarily, avoiding my gaze. Does everyone else know now? Mom and Dad? The whole family? Word travels fast in both families and corporations. I imagine most people know or will soon. The implications of this clearly troubled her. The narrative she had constructed over years was crumbling, and she wasn't sure how to position herself in the new reality. I didn't know, she said finally, a hint of vulnerability breaking through. About your success. Your position. I really thought you were just coasting. Because that's what you wanted to believe, I pointed out. It was easier than considering alternatives. What's that supposed to mean? It means you needed me to be less successful to validate your choices. Your definition of success is external. The house, the car, the vacations, the perfect marriage narrative. If I found success on different terms, it challenged your metrics. Vanessa started to object, then stopped herself, considering my words. That's not entirely fair. Perhaps not, I conceded. But it's not entirely wrong either. The conversation continued for over 2 hours, delving into childhood patterns, parental expectations, and the competition that had defined our relationship for decades. There were difficult moments, old wounds reopened, accusations and defenses. But there were also glimpses of something new, genuine listening, attempts at understanding, and small admissions of fault on both sides. I was jealous, Vanessa finally admitted as the cafe staff began closing up around us. When we were young, things came easily to me, and I liked that. I liked being the successful one. Then, as adults, when life got more complicated and success required more than just natural talent, I think I needed you to stay in your assigned role. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me, and it created an opening for healing that I hadn't expected. And I resented you, I acknowledged in return, for having the spotlight, for making me feel less than. I kept my success private partly because I wanted to prove something to myself, but also because revealing it meant changing a dynamic I'd learned to navigate, even if I didn't like it. As we prepared to leave, Vanessa asked hesitantly, "So, what happens with Trevor now? Is it awkward, him working under you?" "It doesn't have to be. We're in different divisions with minimal direct interaction. The company has protocols for managing family relationships in the workplace." "And us? What happens with us now?" I considered the question carefully. "I think we start over. Try to see each other as we actually are, not as the characters we created in our family story." The following Sunday, our parents hosted a smaller family dinner. The atmosphere was noticeably different, with curious glances cast my way and a new deference in how relatives addressed me. Vanessa made a visible effort to adjust her behavior, though old habits occasionally surfaced in her tone or choice of words. Trevor approached me during a quiet moment on the patio, a glass of wine in hand. "I wanted to thank you for the project approval. The team is excited to move forward." "The project deserved approval," I said simply. "Your presentation was excellent, and the market analysis was thorough. Still, it couldn't have been easy, given the circumstances." He hesitated, then added, "Vanessa is trying, you know. This has been an adjustment for her." "For all of us," I acknowledged. "But necessary, I think." "For what it's worth," Trevor said quietly, "I've always thought you were impressive, even before I knew about your position. The way you handle Vanessa's intensity, your calm under pressure, those are leadership qualities." His recognition, offered without agenda, felt like a small but significant step toward a new kind of family relationship, one based on authentic understanding rather than comfortable myths. 6 months passed, bringing subtle but meaningful changes to my relationship with Vanessa and my place within the family. The revelation about my career success had rippled through our extended family, shifting perceptions and adjusting long-standing dynamics. At the first holiday gathering after the truth emerged, I noticed relatives approaching me differently. Conversations no longer revolved around why I was still single or when I might find direction in my career. Instead, Uncles asked thoughtful questions about industry trends, and cousins sought advice on professional development. Olivia, would you have time to look over Emma's resume? Aunt Martha asked during Christmas dinner. She's applying for a management position and could use some executive perspective. This simple request, acknowledging my expertise and offering a chance to mentor a younger family member, represented a profound shift in how my family viewed my value. Vanessa's adjustment to our new dynamic wasn't seamless. Old habits surfaced occasionally in subtle digs or competitive comments, but they were less frequent and often followed by visible effort to correct course. During a family birthday celebration, when she started to make a joke about my private life, she caught herself mid-sentence, meeting my eyes with a flash of recognition before changing direction. Olivia's probably too busy turning companies around to worry about dating apps, she said instead, with a hint of genuine admiration beneath the teasing. Our parents underwent perhaps the most significant transformation. One Sunday afternoon, Mom invited me to lunch alone, something she'd rarely done before, always including Vanessa in our plans. I've been thinking a lot about your childhood, she said as we settled into a quiet corner table at her favorite restaurant. About the way Dad and I always highlighted Vanessa's achievements. Mom, you don't have to. No, I do, she interrupted gently. We didn't see what was happening. Vanessa was so outgoing, so obviously successful in ways we understood. Your talents were quieter, your path less conventional. We missed how special that was. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I'm so proud of you, Olivia. Not just for your impressive career, but for the woman you've become despite our failures. You built yourself without the support you deserved from us. That conversation began a healing process between us, leading to more regular one-on-one time where she worked to know me as an individual, not just as Vanessa's sister. Dad took longer to adjust his perspective, his traditional views on success, making it difficult for him to fully grasp the significance of my corporate position. But even he made efforts, proudly mentioning my executive role to his golf friends and asking questions about my work that showed genuine interest. At Wilson and Reed, I maintained professional boundaries with Trevor while ensuring no favoritism or unfair treatment affected his department. His project launched successfully, earning him recognition within the company and easing some of the financial pressure he'd been under. Our interactions remained cordial and respect-based, with both of us carefully navigating the unusual circumstance of our connection. The most profound change occurred between Vanessa and me. Initially awkward and uncertain, we gradually established a new kind of relationship based on adult understanding rather than childhood roles. We began meeting monthly for dinner, just the two of us, creating space to know each other beyond the family context. During one such dinner in early spring, Vanessa made a confession that surprised me. I've started seeing a therapist, she said, uncharacteristically hesitant. After everything that happened, I realized I've built my whole identity around being seen as successful, as having the perfect life. It's exhausting, Olivia. That must have been a difficult realization, I acknowledged, careful not to sound condescending. It was. Still is. She twisted her napkin nervously. The therapist thinks I've been compensating for deep insecurity by creating this flawless external image and by diminishing others who might threaten that image. Including me. Especially you. Her eyes met mine directly. I'm sorry, Olivia. Truly. For years of making you feel less than, for all those comments at family gatherings, for never celebrating your successes. The apology, offered without qualifications or deflections, felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. I'm learning that my worth isn't determined by being better than someone else, she continued. And I'm trying to redefine success on my own terms, not just what looks impressive to others. Her journey towards self-awareness reminded me of my own growth over the years. While I had found professional success, I'd also maintained emotional walls that kept people at a distance. My privacy had become both shield and prison, protecting me from hurt but also limiting genuine connection. Inspired by Vanessa's courage, I made my own changes. I began sharing more of my life with trusted friends and family members, allowing myself to be vulnerable in ways I'd avoided for years. I accepted invitations to family events with a new openness, no longer dreading the prospect of being misunderstood or diminished. In my professional life, I became more visible, mentoring younger women in the company and speaking at industry events rather than working exclusively behind the scenes. My experiences with Vanessa had taught me valuable lessons about leadership and communication that enhanced my effectiveness as an executive. During the next annual family reunion, almost exactly a year after the pivotal dinner that changed everything, I found myself sitting beside Vanessa on Uncle Robert's dock, watching the sunset reflect on the lake. "Remember how we used to compete even here as kids?" she asked, smiling at the memory. "Who could swim faster? Who could hold their breath longer?" "You always won the races," I recalled. "But I could stay underwater almost twice as long." "Different strengths," she observed thoughtfully. "I was always focused on what everyone could see and cheer for. You were building endurance nobody noticed." The metaphor wasn't lost on either of us. Do you think we could have avoided all those years of competition if we'd understood that earlier? I wondered. Vanessa considered the question seriously. Maybe. Or maybe we needed to go through it to get here. I'm not sure I would have appreciated your path if I hadn't first tried to diminish it. As the sun dipped below the tree line, casting golden light across the water, I reflected on the journey we'd taken. Success hadn't been what either of us had imagined in our youth. It wasn't a zero-sum game, where one sister's achievement diminished the others. It wasn't defined by external validation or material possessions. True success, I'd learned, was building a life authentic to your values, maintaining integrity even when it's difficult, and finding the courage to rewrite damaging narratives. "I think we're both successful," I said finally. "Just on different timelines and by different measures." Vanessa nodded, reaching over to squeeze my hand briefly. Better late than never to figure that out, right? The simple gesture of affection, offered freely without agenda or competition, represented everything we'd gained through the painful process of truth and reconciliation. Not a perfect relationship, but an authentic one. Not the close sisterhood of movies, but a real connection between two complex women with shared history and individual paths. As we walked back to join the family gathering, I carried with me the deepest lesson of our journey, that true worth comes not from others' perceptions or comparative success, but from the integrity with which we navigate our own unique paths. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in finding freedom from needing their validation at all. If you've ever had a family member underestimate you, or felt the sting of being misunderstood by those who should know you best, I hope this story resonates with you. Has someone in your life ever had to completely reconsider their perception of you? Share your experience in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story touched something in your own heart. Remember, sometimes the quietest journeys lead to the most profound destinations. Thank you for being part of my story today.